at AgRobotics for facilitating this meetup. And by way of introduction, my colleagues, Zev, our Chief Sales and Marketing Officer, is on with us, and our Director of Field Operations, Jeff Shaw. So by way of introduction, for the benefit of my colleagues, Aaron, maybe you could provide a kind of an overview of AgRobotics and the work that you're doing and your work with your constituents. And then I'll give you a brief overview of B-Hero. And then Jeff will provide our Apple research. And I want to be clear here, we're not being prescriptive. We're just sharing some ideas and looking forward to a fruitful conversation and hearing from all of you. So go ahead, Aaron, tell us what you do and let her rip.
Yeah, so just a bit on the AgRobotics working group. Basically, this is something that's been operating for over 2 years now. I was originally started with Kristen Obade, Chuck Barisic, and Ian McDonald. And anyone else I'm missing on there? Those are kind of the primary founders. No? Okay. I'm going to keep going with that then. And basically, we wanted to connect all these different organizations. So whether that's academia, government, processors, producers, and manufacturers, and also investors, get them all together, get them talking, have them understand about the different technology in this area, and then help with the adoption ultimately of AgRobotics and these different sectors of technology for farmers in the Ontario market, and then ultimately the Canadian market as a whole. We've already had great success with this, with different organizations connecting with each other and having that build up. And then also with farmers kind of going, okay, we're seeing that there's research being done now, and this is a possibility for us to have this actually on our operations. So really, really fantastic organization and fantastic people in this group that are really willing to help. So right now in this call, I know we have producers on here. I can see academia on here. I can also see members of government as well, and investors as well. So really a broad bit across. I think there is a couple manufacturers on the call now as well that I see. But yeah, all over. So really fantastic organization. That's a bit about us.
Well, thanks so much for sharing. So let me kind of just quickly give you a broad overview of B-Hero. And I'll do so by starting with a very, very simple fact, which probably all of you are familiar with. And that is that 75% of our global food system requires pollination by bees, primarily honeybees. And it would be difficult to underestimate or over-exaggerate the importance of pollinators and the services they provide in producing food on a global level. And yet, as many of us know, if you're a grower, bee mortality rates on an annualized basis are anywhere between 30 to 40%. And that's a product of a number of issues, not the least of which is climate change, insecticides, pesticides, monoculture, mites, parasites, pollution, urbanization, whatever you else want to throw into the bucket. And in 2017, in the fourth quarter, B-Hero came along, and we're an ag tech company. And this idea was spawned to use low-cost in-hive sensors that measure the health of a hive. And you'll see here that we have these sensors. I don't know if you can see this. These are produced by Sony Manufacturing out of the UK, and they're installed on the center frame of a hive. And they give real-time transparency into the strength, health, and efficiency of the hive. As many of you may know, beehives have an acoustic signature, so you can determine the health of the hive. And what these sensors do is they allow us to measure key variables like light, temperature, sound, humidity, magnetic field, so on and so forth. And that data is transmitted to what we call a gateway. And that data goes up to the cloud, where it's then analyzed by our R&D out of Tel Aviv. So we get real-time transparency into the health of a hive. And why is that important? Because the greater the pollination force, the greater the number of flowers pollinated, which translates into greater crop yields. We have now, since in 7 years, we've become the largest pollination provider in the world. We have the largest data set on bees and pollination in the world. And those metrics are based on hives under management and acres under pollination. And we essentially provide precision pollination as a service. And we work with best-in-class growers. We create contracts with the actual grower. And then behind this curtain, we work with beekeepers as a kind of an OEM, if you will, and we give them more technology on a gratis basis. And then we get exclusivity to the hive, and it becomes an asset for us. So we're very excited to have all of you on board here. We are very, very data driven. We use machine learning, AI, and we have a great team. And we've recently expanded into additional crops beyond almonds, including berries, canola, and in, I guess, 2022, we entered the Australia market. We pollinate about or work with about 10,000, 11,000 plus acres of canola in Australia, and we're doing extensive research now in apples. And I'd just like to roll it over to Jeff. And Jeff, maybe you could pull up your screen and we could share our apple research. And then we can open it up for some discussion and go from there. So with that, here we go.
Can everybody see the screen?
Yep.
Excellent. All right. Well, my name is Jeff Shaw, as Craig and Aaron mentioned, and I've pretty much been with Bee Heroes since the inception in the deployment of sensors to the commercial beekeeping industry, late 2018. I am a commercial beekeeper myself. I manage about 300 colonies in Western Pennsylvania, Michigan, and upstate New York. And so I have a deep understanding and passion for bees. I've done it for about 25 years. And Bee Hero was really a interesting opportunity for me. And over the course of the few years that I've been working with them, I've inspected over 100,000 colonies, not only in almond pollinations, but other crops. We've run data research projects in the range of 900 hives for multiple years in almonds in the Central Valley. And the technology is extremely exciting and impressive to me. And that's just a little bit about my background and my involvement with the bees. The leadership group consists of Itai, Omer, and Yuval. They're the three founders. Itai's family is in the commercial beekeeping industry in Israel. They're the largest commercial beekeeper in Israel, managing about 5,000 colonies there. Omer is our CEO. He's been instrumental in taking a lot of startup companies in the tech industry public. And Yuval Regev is also in Israel, and he is our lead tech AI machine learning specialist who orchestrates the team and the technology. We also have Zev, which Craig mentioned, who has decades of experience in agriculture on all different aspects and levels, from irrigation to crop management. Batel, who is our chief legal advisor, business consultant, and Craig, who, as you all know, is a strategic sales and key liaison between the industry and key influential figures who are making a difference in the agricultural community. We have a lot of investment funding and collaboration from various different key sources, and these are a few of those who are supporting our continued growth and scaling of the technology and deploying it in this industry. So the overview here that I'm going to give is some of our key research in apples, which I'm actually up in the Yakima Valley in Washington. And we've kind of focused on that area with one of the main key growers. And we've had 4 different areas or orchards that we've been doing research in over multiple years. And the interesting thing about these specific orchards is they're in different microclimates. So we get a wide range of insight and data on the both cherries and apples in these microclimates, and how the wind, weather, and altitudes and the conditions are affecting the various crops, the bloom stages, and the overall fruit sets of these particular orchards. The technology is that we're deploying is kind of multi-phase. Not only do we have the beehives, which we're orchestrating those coming in, going out, and the logistics of them for the growers, but we're also deploying the technology. We have, as Craig mentioned, the in-hive sensors, which basically, if you have a double deep on a pallet, the in-hive sensor will go in between the 2 boxes, and that will basically do readings every 15 minutes, real time, and tell you what the hive strength of the colony is, the temperature, the brood frames, the actual bee frames of the colony itself. And this is very effective when you go into a pollination effort similar to almonds, which is really important because the growers are going to want to know what kind of frame counts they're getting, and the beekeepers are interested in the strength of their colonies because that's what they're getting paid for. So we're creating a transparent model in the industry, so the beekeepers have real-time information on their colonies, because these are being transported all over the country to the various different crops, and they need real-time information on how the bees are doing. In the grower side, they are not going to go out there and pop the lids and figure out what the bees are doing, and whether they have 8 frames or 12 frames based on the age of their crops. So they get real-time information on the drop points, the bees, the strength of the colonies, and a kind of a guarantee of what kind of pollination effort they're going to get. In addition, we have the in-field sensors. We have 2 kind of versions of this. One for seed crops like onions, which we're running a project with right now in Israel, where there's it's a longer process for the pollination effort. So there's a more enhanced and robust battery in there. They can be mounted on poles, or they can be placed in the trees like you see right here in apples. And the similar and same technology with different algorithms and different programming can be just clipped over the frame inside the beehive itself. How we're actually monitoring these is through the AI and through the frequency levels of the bees itself. This is kind of an example of the specific signature of a honeybee in the field or in the orchard. And when a bee comes to pollinate the bloom, it can be within 6 inches of the sensor, and it'll record the bee activity for each bee visit through this signature, and then transfer that information back to our platform in Israel. So we get real-time data on heat maps, where the bees are, if they're moving, like in the particular orchards that we are in. We've got Cosmic Crisp, we've got Pink Ladies, we've got Gala apples, and those are going off at different bloom stages. So you're having the bees go to the optimum forage opportunities. So they might be moving from one variety to another variety, and we're capturing that on the actual heat maps in the bee activity in the orchard. For the grower side, we're providing back real-time data through applications on their phone. So the beekeepers have an application. They can check their hives, they can check their yards, their locations. They can track their hives all along the process in their journeys. The grower side, they can plot their orchards. They can do the bee density plots, where they want the hives drops for the logistics, and making sure they get them distributed throughout the crops evenly. And for the grower, the app is providing also a real-time data feedback on these actual crops and what the bee activities are through charts and graphs. This is an example of our research deployment in the Grant L Orchard, which is up in Wattawa, where I am currently. There's about 240 hives in this orchard. It's a smart orchard. All the trees are trellised. And we do have the 3 varieties there, in addition to 3 different pollinator varieties, which was kind of the focus this year for the grower, of which one of those pollinator varieties were providing the best effort for the bees in cross-pollination. So on these colonies, we have a various technology, which we're tracking the bees. On the front, we have bee counters. So we're actually tracking every forage trip and every return trip. In some of these colonies, throughout the 3-week effort, they're ranging up close to 1 million forage trips per colony. So when you extrapolate that across 240 colonies, there's hundreds of millions of forage trips, which we're then tracking in the field. In addition to that, we have scales on the hive. So we know coming in, a lot of these hives are coming in from almond pollination, and we're knowing what the reserves are in the honey and what the nectar forage force is bringing back to the colony to help build and strengthen the colony for the beekeeper during the entire pollination effort. And we can track that on a real-time basis hourly. And that basically goes into our platform. We can key in the dates and the relevant information and get real-time data on on the hives we have monitored. Everything is powered through solar gateways. And we also have weather packs, so we're tracking the weather, the rain, the wind. And the interesting thing about everybody's different orchards is there's small microclimates, and the wind and the rain and the temperatures are affecting the bees' forage trips. And we're seeing that throughout the course of monitoring this in real time. When you have a weather event, your pollination and forage trips are dropping dramatically. So if you have 3 or 4 days, those are 3 or 4 days that the bees aren't actually being active in pollinating the crops. This is an example. I mentioned the scales at the Harrison Singh Orchard, which is down near Sunnyside, south of Yakima. And these are just an example of some of the weight counts that we're seeing from the time the hives arrive, which is about the beginning of April, till the bloom onset. This was last year's bloom. Last year was extremely late. They were about 2.5 to 3 weeks late because of the weather. And it was kind of a record season because it was so late. So you can see the drop off in the bee weights on the hives themselves and in relationship to the first bloom. So as we get to the first bloom, then the weights start to drop off, and their consumption of what they're coming in with the reserve stores versus what they're continuing to build up the hive with is then starting to level off. So we're monitoring that all along the way so we can support the beekeepers and the growers and what the strength of the colonies are. This is an example of the bloom tracking that we do with the monitors. And we're looking at the king bloom stage all the way to the petal drop in the fruit set calculation. So we're kind of tracking so we can go back and we can look at the hive data in the field heat maps and the bee activity in the orchard and see Well, where were the actual blooms in these orchards at any particular point in time, and compare that to the data that we're receiving to provide to the growers, so we can see that the transitions are happening based on weather, based on bloom, based on bee activity, in the transition from maybe pink ladies to the cosmic crisp, because the bloom in pink ladies were full on the 22nd of April. And the cosmic crisp was just coming on at that point in time. So we can track the information across the various different varieties. As I mentioned, weather is very important. This is one of the charts generated from the data that we're receiving on the orchards in real time. And you can see the start of the bloom and the start of the bee activity in the orchard on each particular day. So early on in the month, the forage trips, the number of hours that they were actually in the field was very minimum. But as the temperatures warmed up, the blooms started to take off. You're seeing the forage trips going from anywhere from like 3 to 4 hours to 6 to 8 hours. And on this bottom chart here, you're seeing the daily flight hours throughout the course of the bloom cycle. And as you get in towards the end of the bloom, the flight cycles and the bee forage trips are dramatically increasing. Again, this is an example from the bloom start to the average daily bee counts or minute by minute counts. In this particular example, this is showing you on the bee forage trips that we're hitting about 400 trips per minute on the April 28th. Again, this was last year, so the bloom start was very late, but you can see the progressive upswing in bee activity throughout the course of the cycle. I will also mention on this that the data that we're getting from the orchard itself in the sensors, I'm not sure why my thing is not working. There we go. We're also able to look at the bee activity, not only leaving the hive, but how that compares to the number of bees that are actually showing up in the orchard. An interesting thing that we saw this year was once the 3 varieties hit peak bloom, a lot of the wildflowers in the valley were also starting to go off. So one of the key features that we're analyzing this data from in the actual bloom sets is the pollen return to the hive. So we're collecting pollen samples every 24 hours and comparing those pollen samples to each variety, because each pollen has a specific fingerprint signature. And if we analyze the pollen sets of that, we can tell were the bees in the cosmic crisp, were the bees in the pink ladies, were the bees in the galas, because they're bringing back the pollen from each one of those varieties, which we then can compare for the grower to the actual in-field data in the beehive data, and kind of merge all 3 of those data points to show him the effectiveness in each one of the crops. This is from 2024. These are up to about a week and a half ago. This is data coming straight off the server as the actual bee flight hours increase from April 9th to April 14th. So this is a little bit better graph to show you than the first one, where we're getting on April 9th, 5.4 hours of flight time during the day, up to 10.5 hours of flight time on April 14th. And the chart on the right will show you bee trips per hour on a colony. And we're looking at 3,500 on April 9th, and it's going, dramatically up through the course of the bloom cycle. This was particularly in the cosmic crisps. And so you're seeing a little bit of a flattening out on the 13th and 14th. I'm sorry, there was the pink lady. So you're seeing a little bit of flattening out because that was peak bloom around the 14th or 15th. And then the cosmic crisp kicked in, and you're seeing the activity shift and flatten out on the pink ladies. And then the bees were moving to the cosmic crisps. And here's an example of what I just spoke of. So you can see from April 9th, there's a increase in activity in the one variety. It peaks out, then you have an increase in bloom activity from king bloom on into the sequential bloom on the cosmic crisp, and the bees are actually shifting. They're shifting and bringing the pollen back. They're shifting in their forage trips. They're shifting in one block of the orchard to another block of the orchard, and all that is monitored for the grower through the course of time. I will show you this as well. This is one of the key focuses for the grower this year was which pollinator varieties actually getting the most activity from the bees to cross-pollinate to the very different varietal crops. There were Granny Smith, Mount Everest, and Snowdrift varieties, and we actually tracked each one of those in the blocks to see which activity had the most, so we could report to the grower when they replace those trees or replant additional blocks, which ones are the most effective. Wind speed, temperatures, daily hive trips all come into play, as I mentioned before. The higher the temperatures, the more forage trips you're going to get. The lower temperatures and higher wind speeds, you're going to get a significant drop off. This year, again, this is real data from here in the research project this year. We had a cooled spell on the 15th and the 16th. So you're seeing a dramatic drop off in the bee forage activity based on wind speeds and based on temperature. And that's going to affect spray schedules. That's going to affect the management protocols that the orchard people are implementing. And it's also going to, determine the bees' activity in those crops and also the state of the bloom. There was a significant slowdown in the bloom process in the pink ladies and the cosmic crisps at that particular time, which is drawn out the whole pollination effort this particular year a lot longer because the bloom set is progressing at a slower temperature. So that's kind of an overview. What we're doing, we can certainly go into deeper explanation on a lot of these points with you as you see fit in your particular circumstances. And we just kind of wanted to open it up for questions and see if we can create a dialogue. Certainly, you're welcome to contact me if you have any further questions. We can kind of do a deeper dive into some of these specific monitoring techniques and process and the data that we're gaining from the growers. And if you care to do that, certainly feel free to get in touch with me or Craig.
Jeff, quickly, this is Craig here. If you could you share with our colleagues here, what are some of the principal challenges that apple growers in the state of Washington have each year that you've been able to identify?
For apples in particular, one of the big things was when the bees should arrive and when should they leave, and how many bees should they have? Like, do we have an effective colony distribution or do we have an ineffective colony distribution? And what we've been able to gather through the multi-year monitoring is bee density, forage density, and in each of the crops, and what is the right timing for the bees. Because on a lot of these modern orchards, they're smart orchards. They have very hyper management protocols, and they're on very tight schedules. They have specific crews for specific applications. They've got pruning going on. They've got soil testing going on, irrigation, and that all is affecting various different aspects of the bee flights in the orchards and in the effective pollination. So some of the challenges are, if we have an extreme weather event where it's extremely cool, the bees aren't necessarily flying. So those need to be managed with possible spray schedules for insecticides or pesticides, thinning practices, as well as just the overall management of the bees and the orchards themselves. So I think one of the big challenges for the growers is getting accurate information, like what is actually going on out there. They have their ideas about their management practices and best practices, but there's a lot of moving parts, and the bees are the biggest. It's like, what are they doing? Where are they at? How much density are we achieving? And by the technology that we're providing them, they're able to see and be reassured, especially in almonds as well. You know, I mean, we're talking about apples here, but the growers really want to know if they're putting a pollen stimulant on those the almond trees or the apple trees, is it deterring the bees or is it actually supporting the bees? And is it making a difference? Is it actually stimulating the bees? Are we getting more bee density in those varieties where they're putting the pollen attractant versus where they haven't put the pollen attractant? So it's real-time information that's having them look at their costs and their management practices to determine the best return on investment.
I see we have a couple questions for you as well. Jason, I think, was the first to raise his hand. Jason, if you're there.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. Just want to make sure I understand correctly. Please correct me if I'm mistaken, but the service is to bring bees to different orchards, and then you manage the beehives and the bees through this like intelligent or a censored system?
That's correct. Not only are we working with the grower, but we're also managing the logistics of the bees and the beekeepers themselves. So we have direct relationships with the beekeepers. We're managing about 200,000 colonies across the U.S. These are beekeepers from pretty much every state, from Maine to New Mexico. And they have our equipment deployed in their hives year round. When they go to a pollination effort, we're able to track them and monitor them and provide key information to the grower as well as the beekeeper. A lot of these bees are on the back of tractor trailers, so they need real-time information what the strength and health of the colony is if it's going from, you know, the East Coast to the West Coast and then back again, especially in early January for almonds, when a lot of these are traveling through inclement weather, you know, at high altitudes for multiple days and sub-zero temperatures. So yeah, we are managing the logistics of the beekeepers to the actual growers' pollination fields.
Okay, so is the customer the beekeeper or the farmer or both?
Both. It's both.
Okay, so in terms of like if there's something wrong with the hive kind of thing, the beekeeper has that information, or you transmit that information to them and then they address it in their location kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. So, for example, the beekeeper has a real-time data on their application platform. So we're transmitting daily multiple points for them to track their hives. So if you have a beekeeper that has 2,000 colonies, maybe they have 50 different out yards where they're distributing these bees in a particular area. All those yards are mapped on the application for them. All his hive strength and health are mapped per yard. If he has a queen problem in one of those colonies, he can see that. He can actually track it down to the pallet to actually track it down to the hive, replace the queen. So we're giving the beekeeper a lot of added value because they need it. I mean, they need real-time information on what is going on with their investment and their bees.
Mhm.
And because once they get the almonds or apples, they need to know that the bees are in good shape and they're actually going to get the return on investment for them. They're going to get paid for it, because the grower is looking at their side of the app too, saying, look, these are great. Last year I had 10 frame hives. This year I have 12 frame hives. And so we're providing that transparency to both the grower and the value added to the beekeeper so he can manage his colonies.
Mhm. Cool. So the revenue from the honey and all that, that's separate. That's like the beekeeper manages their hives and they get the output, and this is to help
Yeah,
them manage
that's
their
a,
hives.
that's a additional profit center for the beekeeper themselves. So
Hmm.
yeah, we're not interfering. We're not doing the daily maintenance of the hives, requeening, splitting, supering, desupering, honey extraction. That's all the beekeeper's responsibility. Those are their operations. We don't get involved at that. We just provide the tech in the platform for them to better manage their operation ongoingly through the year.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah, good
Dan
question.
Bath, you have a question?
Hi, yeah. Thanks very much for a great presentation. It's really fascinating technology. I just wonder, maybe you mentioned it and I missed it, but how do you actually track the bee trips? I think you suggested you can track both ingress and egress. How do you actually monitor that?
We have the scale, which is a aluminum plate that we put underneath the hive. We also put on a commercial pallet. Basically, there's clips in the hive. Body sits directly on the pallet. What we do is we pick that hive up. We place a scale down with 4 load cells on each point, and then we put a bottom board, custom bottom board, and then the hive back on top of that. On the front of that bottom board, we have a bee counter. It's a 25-point counter, which mounts directly to the front of the hive. And the bees, it's an infrared port with light cells. So once a bee goes through that port directionally out, it counts it as a bee forage trip. When the bee comes back in, it's going in the opposite direction, breaks the light cell, and it's a return trip. So every bee that leaves that colony is monitored. Some of the colonies, the lids don't fit well. They might have extra holes drilled in the front for ventilation. We basically seal those up on the research and monitored hives so they can only go through that front port. So we get very accurate counts per colony. The other thing that I didn't mention is I'm also doing physical inspections on these colonies at 2 to 3 points throughout the pollination effort. So I'm actually physically going into the hive, looking at bee frames, brood frames, eggs, larvae, pupa, honey stores, pollen reserves. It's like a 54-point full scientific inspection. That basically gets entered into our system and then gets merged with the data from the bee forage trip. So we can see if we've got an 8-frame colony versus a 14-frame colony, the forage trips are much higher on those monitor colonies than an 8-frame. But that's provided a lot of insight because even though you have a 14-frame colony versus an 8-frame colony, that 8-frame colony could be effectively as efficient as the 14-frame. Because once a colony kind of gets to a point, kind of maxes out, they have enough reserves. They're kind of like set, and the forage force kind of starts to diminish a little bit. So, but on an 8-frame or a 10-frame, they're just building up. So the forage force is greater. So that's where we're kind of looking at the efficiencies for the grower. What is the frame per acre that you really need to maximize your pollination effort? So we can use that data to actually strategically look at the beekeeper's hives and determine based on the age of the tree, based on the nut yields that the growers got in the past and what he wants to get in the future. What is the optimum pollination effort in the frame count per acre that we can provide them for maximum effectiveness?
Very cool. You also mentioned that you were monitoring the bee density over different varieties and so on. And you noted that it fluctuated. Is that because the bees are changing their level of activity and just becoming less active and more dormant almost when the budding is finished, or are bees actually relocating, and so that the actual density of bees in the hives is changing?
No, the actual density of the bees is not changing. That's a really good question, because so I didn't have in this slide, but I could share it with you, is that we basically have these sensors. This particular one orchard, we got to have 1,000 sensors in 3 different varieties. It's about 75 acres. We have over 1,000 sensors in this field. So the tracking is pretty high level, and we can see, as I'll just take for example, like the pink lady. King bloom was first in the pink ladies, and then it went into full bloom. So the bees were really working that, because they're always going to go to the most opportunistic opportunity for forage. So given that that is peak, they're working that pretty much until it's not peak anymore, and there's a better alternative in cosmic crisps. So then cosmic crisps start to go off, and we see the bee density in the pink ladies kind of shift. And that was that one chart where it kind of levels off in pink ladies, and then we see a strong uptake in the cosmic crisp, because that went into king bloom, full bloom. The pollen reserves, the nectar reserves in those blooms were greater and more opportunistic. So they're like, hey, we're going to move over here because there's better forage opportunities. Once they both kind of level out, they're like, hey, we've got wildflowers blooming like 2 miles away on the foothills, and they're prolific. So what we were seeing was a big shift in the pollen that was coming back to the orchard. It was no longer apple pollen. It was 50-50. It was 50 bright orange daisies and asters out there in the field, and 50% of the cosmic crisp pollen. So you can actually see that with the pollen coming back, because their forage trips are determining what's the most advantageous forage source. So then you start to see a decrease in the bee activity in the orchard, and more towards the alternative forage, which has nothing to do with your orchard. And then you can say, look, this is kind of the point. They're really not working the apples anymore. They're kind of past peak. Let's get the bees out. Let's go into the next management practice.
Great. Thank you very much. That's awesome.
I see we have another question from Paul Kozak, who I do believe is the provincial apiarist from the Ministry of Agriculture here in Ontario as well. Paul, if you wanted to give your question.
Yeah, thank you. Great presentation, really interesting stuff. 1 or 2 questions. Let's see here. Would there be an alarm or say like a trigger or some sort of tool that would let the beekeeper know if there's an issue? So I'm seeing all these graphs, and beekeepers are managing multiple yards, they're doing different things in addition to pollination often within their operation. And these, there's a lot of data there. Are there any kind of triggers or alarms for a particular issue that would alert them? So for example, like like a queenless colony came up as an example. Would there be something like that might kind of tweak or send them a notice so that they can take action or intervention?
Yeah, that's a great question. And as a beekeeper, you like kind of want to know, if you've got thousands of colonies, it's kind of like, I need to know where the hot points are and what I need to manage. And yes, we do have that. There is a queen if the hive is queenless, maybe she's failing, maybe it's a laying worker, maybe it's got PMS and it's just going down, you're going to see an alert because it's showing you your frame counts per yard or per hive. So you can drill down, and if you want to look globally at your operation, you got 2,000 colonies, it'll tell you your average frame count for all those colonies is 10. Okay. So, you know, I might have some 5s in there. I might have some 14s, but the average is 10. That's very important when they're kind of like looking at going to almonds. If you have that, you drill down into the yards, and it's like, I've got 14 guys and they're making the circuit on all these yards. And you can look at the yard and say, hey, we got a situation here. Maybe we have overspray from a situation, and we've got colonies that are going down, like in the foothills. So, you know, 3 of you guys need to take the truck, and you need to go out there. I know we're not supposed to look at those till next week, but something happened because we're seeing like low brood. We're seeing, you know, some issues. And the app on the Beekeeper app is going to actually show them that. It's going to show them that they're getting drop in frame counts. If they got a mite infestation, that could be happening there, because the sensors are determining frequency within the hive. It's determining temperature, humidity, and reporting back to them what their actual brood frame counts are, which is kind of the lifeblood of the hive. If there's a failing queen, the audio in the hive is actually changing. So we've, through the AI learning, we've isolated the lack of queen presence, and that shows up. Hey, you got a queen problem here. Either she's not distributing pheromones and they're not reacting and operating like they should be, or you rolled her the last time the hive was inspected. And that shows up. The beekeeper.
Okay, so there's like a signature for that roar that the colony will make when they go queenless.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And another question that I had, and I got a lot, but I'll keep it to one more. So are there things that a beekeeper would need to do if they were using this technology? So would there be organization and documentation that the beekeepers should be using to kind of fall in line with this? So for example, like, I mean, a really quick thing would be, you know, beekeepers should be numbering their colonies. Many may not, typically, if they're going into a pollination system, but if I'm sure if they have a sensor to, they're going to want to, you know, have things, tracked, marked, and what sort of documentation is there, or do you guys have a standard that beekeepers have to follow?
Well, the standard is they just have to keep using us because they have our technology. I
Right.
mean, and benefit from it, because I mean, we're not really charging the beekeeper for this technology. It's kind of like, look, if you want to come on board with us and you want support, you want to go to the almond effort, you want to get into that game, maybe you already have relationships. We'll work with those relationships, and we'll also work with you. So we're providing the technology to the beekeeper, and we're creating the system for them. Before, they might be 2nd generation, 3rd generation beekeeper, that they just kind of doing the same thing that their dad did or their grandpa did. And it's like, that's not always working, because it's a whole different game out there now. And you've got integrative pest management. You've got weather conditions. You've got poor genetics, and all these factors are kind of like providing the new generation with bigger challenges. And so they've got their attention on a lot of different things. Documenting is not probably one high on the list. It's like treatment, honey crops, you know, equipment management, employees. And so what we're doing is we're giving them the tools for integrating like efficiency. They don't need to necessarily keep hive numbers or paperwork or things like that, because once they have that sensor in there, it's logged. It's like identified. It's like putting a tag on the front, a cattle tag in the
Mhm.
ear, or whatever. Those have a signature on them. The gateway on the front of the hive it has an IP address. Every sensor in the hive has an IP address. All that information goes straight into their smartphone, and it's all categorized for them. It's all organized for them. So it's actually providing efficiency to their operation. That's the value added to the beekeeper, is efficiency, transparency, and running their operation with real-time data. So they don't necessarily need to do anything other than install the equipment and manage their colonies, which is the most important thing to do. The gateway basically mounts to the front of the hive. That's what's transmitting the data from every hive to the cloud and providing the information in real time to the app. So they can, again, drill down farther. They can not only look at the global operation, but the specific yards, but the specific hives. If they're seeing failing hives in a certain region, it's kind of like they have to ask themselves, why? Because maybe it's a cold climate, maybe it's damp, maybe it's too shady, maybe it's not, maybe it's around other higher volume sprays or oversprays, and the bees aren't doing well. They're like kind of getting European foul brood and things like that. And they're seeing the drop when they drill down into those specific yards. Maybe they're going to change their yard. So it's organizing them. It's also tracking all their hives. Like they can see if these are getting transported from Maine to New Mexico, they can see where their hives are on the truck, because the gateways have GPS location, and they know where everything is in their operation at one time. They could keep track of that with pen and paper, but they don't.
Yeah.
And this is providing a infrastructure of efficiency, which truthfully the beekeeping industry has needed for a long time, because there's a lot of logistics involved in modern day agriculture in moving hives around, and it takes a lot of organization and mental consciousness to keep that tracked, and that's a value added that Bee Heroes bringing to the table.
I mean, the hard
Okay,
truth,
thank you.
the hard truth, everyone, is that the overwhelming majority of growers really have no idea on the potency and strength of their hives. And what this technology allows us to do is give a grower and a beekeeper the transparency into the strength of the hive, and that's critically important in terms of crop yields and the health of the hive. So
We are coming up to our time, but I'll let David Hobson have a quick question in here, and then we can.
Oh, now I have to pick which one out of the 10 questions I have. First off, fantastic use of technology. You guys are the fleet managers of biological trucks, just like like you are for Walmart. The logistics for Walmart. You could teach Walmart some stuff. So the most important question I want to know is, who are you working with academically to do leading edge research?
great question.
USDA, and a lot of the bee labs, UC Davis, we're doing work there. They're running a multi-year project for European foul brood. They received our equipment in late January, early February. They're going to be deploying it in about 150 colonies that they're going to be tracking over the course of, they're saying 3 to 5 years, and really trying to do a deep dive into some of the different crops that are being heavily managed, and the bees come out not as optimum as when they went in. And so that's a big one. Baton Rouge with the USDA, and you know, we've got probably a dozen different projects going on with different you know, labs in USDA fields.
Are you interested in the gut microbiome of honeybees?
I think it's important. I mean, for
We have
bee
some
hero-
experts in that space.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a focus of Bee Hero right now. I think as a beekeeper, that's important. And you know, to create an optimum immune defense for the bees, because they're being, you know, just like us, we're being exposed to a lot of different strains of things that we have to get immunity to, and the bees are the same way. I mean, they're getting assaulted with a lot of different factors, but that's where the labs in the USDA, they're kind of taking our technology to monitor the colonies, to do micro research on specific fields like that, where they're just monitoring that on a daily basis using our technology. But for Bee Hero, it's not. For the bioresearch and the research department, we're kind of really trying to fine tune the grower side in relationship to the beekeeper side, and kind of get that model optimized versus taking a deep dive into bee health in research.
So I just want to extend my my heartfelt thanks to Aaron and all of you for joining us. You should know that we're collaborative by nature, and if you have any questions, additional comments or thoughts, you should feel free to reach out to any one of us. Again, some very, very thoughtful questions, and can't thank you enough, Aaron, and all of you for leaning in with us. This is dynamic, fun stuff, and we're very passionate about what we do, and we like to work with best-in-class entrepreneurs, innovators, and growers that are data-driven. So if you have any questions, lean on us. We're here to help in any way possible. We're frankly all in this together, so it's a team effort all around. So thanks, Aaron, and thanks to all of you. And I'm going to get another cup of coffee.
Thank you
So,
for your
Kristen,
presentation, Greg.
Kristen, did you have a question?
Well, I don't have a question, but I just wanted to let everybody in the working group know that, you know, this opportunity came to me through Invest Toronto, and that's how it all kind of came together. But I also like people to be aware that we had a previous meeting with Craig and team, and we're hoping to put together a project for next season. So in apples and probably apples, but we do have a lot of pollination issues in some other crops like plums and other tender fruit. So I just want people to be aware of that. And if there are people interested in participating and helping to find funding and put together that project, just please let us know.
and thank you. Thanks and hats off to Kristen for aggregating really smart folks. It's a great effort, and a lot of folks could take a page out of your playbook. I'll tell you, Kristen, this is good stuff, and this is where innovation happens, when you bring passionate, smart people together. So I can't thank you enough for your efforts.
So we look forward to follow-up discussions, and contact Aaron if you're interested in participating in a project. There are some funding opportunities that just came up. And we do know that, hives move around. They do move across Canada. So there could be potential to bring in some other provinces as well.
All right, everyone, have a great day. Cobalt blue skies here in California. It's going to be about 80 degrees, gentle wind out of the west, no humidity. So have a super day.
You as well, Craig.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day.
Thank you.